Hey everyone, I'm Chris Lesniak,
And I'm Rob Byer, and this is
the Debate Math Podcast.
Debating Mathy topics and Mathy pedagogy with Mathy people just like you.
Let's get into this month's debate. Hello and welcome to our final Summer Hot Seat series episode. As a reminder, for these debates, we put some educators with interesting ideas or strong opinions in a hot seat where they will share their thoughts and I will play the role of cross-examining them a bit. Quick note, regardless of our personal thoughts on the topic, I will be pushing back on the ideas presented, so the questions do not necessarily reflect my personal views or views of those involved in this podcast. And with that, let's get into our final hot seat. For this hot seat, we wanted to lean the topic of data science. It's starting to become a course offered in high schools. So today we're asking, is data science as rigorous as any other advanced math class? Well, we have two guests from Data Science for Everyone ready to take the hot seat. So let's see what they have to say about this. Our first guest has a Bachelor of Science degree in business with a marketing concentration from Wake Forest University. She has worked at SAS, a global analytics software company where she created and maintained strategic partnerships, promoting education outreach initiatives focused on data literacy and coding across K-12 education. It's Leigh-Ellen Harmer.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Can you tell our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
Absolutely. So I'm actually sitting in Raleigh, North Carolina, but I work for Data Science for Everyone, which is based out of the University of Chicago. My role is the partnerships manager, and I kind of act as a connector between districts who are interested in implementing data science or are trying to figure out what it is, and content partners or industry partners, and how we can better support their goals, whether that's implementing data literacy or data science across K-12.
Very good. And now the question we ask all of our guests, when did math first become controversial to you?
So I think the first time I really had had trouble with math was when I was in college. I was taking a statistics course, and I really, really struggled with it. I think I was having trouble not understanding the math behind it and sort of, what are the concepts behind the formulas. I think I, at times, was trying to memorize the formulas because I just wasn't getting things to click. No matter how many hours I spent with my study partner or in sessions with the professor, just was really struggling to get the concepts to kind of crystallize for me. And to me, it just felt very formulaic, and I wasn't understanding the broader context. And I think that was really a missed opportunity because now I work with folks who are data scientists or who have worked in statistics, teach statistics, and I hear them talking about it, and I'm thinking, man, that was not my experience, and I really wish it had been. So that's probably my story.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And arguing along with her in this hot seat is our next guest, who has a bachelor's degree in mathematics education and a master's degree in applied mathematics from North Carolina A&T State University. And he also earned a graduate certificate in applied statistics and data management at North Carolina State. He's a former instructor of mathematics as well as a co-developer of the data science program at the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics. It's Mahmoud Harding.
Hey, how you doing, Chris? Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, great to have you here. Can you tell our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
So right now I'm in Cary, North Carolina, which is very close to the campus of NC State. Even though NC State is in Raleigh, I sort of live on the border. What I do now is I work full-time at Data Science for Everyone as an instructional design specialist. I focus mainly on helping districts and states think about things like standards and implementation for independent data science courses, as well as ways to integrate data science skills and data literacy across K-12 education. And one of my passions lies in creating great instructional activities that are very creative so that students can really get a chance to engage with mathematics in a meaningful way and change their view of it so that they think that it's more of a tool to use to solve problems than some distinct set of topics that don't seem to fit together.
Very good. Thank you. And again, the question we ask all of our guests: when did math first become controversial to you?
All right. So it might not have been as controversial for me as it was for my father, but in the ninth grade, in the first quarter, I really struggled with geometry. And prior to taking geometry, I was put in algebra in the eighth grade. And algebra came very easy to me. It sort of made sense in the way that it was taught, very abstractly. But geometry presented a different set of challenges in terms of problem solving. And I had to really think differently. And I wasn't prepared at that young age to grapple with these new sort of cognitive tasks. So my teacher was very gracious in allowing me to come to her room after school, and we would work on 2-column geometry proofs on the board. And it was really my first introduction to this idea that mathematics has different faces, because the face of the 2-column logic proof using theorem and sound logic and argumentation that's connected was very different than what I experienced in the 7th and 8th grade.
Very good. Thank you for that. Welcome to you both. And with that, let's get into the debate. We begin with opening statements from our guests. You each have 2 minutes to present your arguments. And Lee Ellen, I think you're up first, and your time begins now.
Great. Thank you. So data science is a very different approach to math than some people may think. And so I think a lot of folks argue that it may not be as rigorous as, say, algebra or, statistics. We want to counter that by saying we're not looking to have data science replace algebra or statistics, but instead we think that it brings a whole nother set of problems to students. Students are often faced with a class that is very formulaic. It is, as someone said, it is more the theory at times, and they may not necessarily see the relevance to that real life application, so to speak. And I think data science poses some different problems because you've got problem solving efforts, you have critical thinking, and the students are really asked to think outside the box, which isn't always in their comfort zone. So rigor may look very different, and high quality materials may look very different when we're in the data science realm than when we're in, say, the algebra classroom. And so, we really have to understand that we are comparing apples to oranges here when we're looking at rigor within an algebra classroom versus, say, a data science classroom. Neither one is bad, but we're looking at a different set of concepts that we need to address with our students.
Thank you. And up next, we have Mahmoud. Your 2 minutes begin now.
All right. So I'm going to be very definitive. Data science is as rigorous as any other advanced math course. Full stop. And the reason that I say this is because there's an academic standard for rigor that's based on skills, problem solving within a context, critical thinking, iterating through solutions, checking solutions and quantifying them for reliability and reasonableness, and communicating your results. And all of those skills are embedded inside of a data science course, just as those skills are embedded inside an algebra course or a statistics course or a calculus course. So the rigor comes from how the teacher crafts the instructional experience within that content to match those skills that every university professor wants their student to come prepared with to engage with their content. So the idea that the rigor in data science doesn't resemble the rigor that many people remember from their experience in algebra, be it a good experience or a bad experience, It's maybe they haven't experienced rigor in the other realms of mathematics. And that awakening moment happened to me in geometry. In geometry, you solve a problem where you're trying to find measures of angles or sides of polygons. There's no notes. There's one number written. This angle is 36 degrees. But the amount of cognitive workload that you had to do to judge from other information given in the graph is intense. But you can't write it down. No one writes down the steps. But in algebra, that rigor manifests itself as a set of steps that people can see. So because we can't see the steps in geometry and we can see the steps in algebra, it doesn't negate that there's rigor in both. And I say, because people don't necessarily see the rigor in data science, it doesn't negate it.
Thank you both. We're off to a great start here. I want to start. I have a lot of questions for you. My first one, I really want to get in this word rigor. I don't want to spend forever on this, but I think everyone, when they think rigor, they just mean difficult, right? Like the most challenging, the most work in some way. My calculus class in high school was rigorous because I got like 50 problems of homework every night. So what is rigor? Like, can we really get just the definition of the word? What does that mean to you? Like, are proofs the ultimate sign of rigor, or like what is rigor?
Well, to me, rigor shows up in how the instructor is able to transfer the cognitive workload to the student. It requires a student to process, make judgments, and check if their judgments are correct or not. So to me, the idea of rigor can't be tied to the name of the course or to the amount of work given. One could be given one singular problem that takes them days, maybe even for some mathematicians, years. If you think of Fermat's last theorem, hundreds of years before people even solve it. That's one problem. So it's not about the quantity of work you do, but it's about the cognitive quality of the work and how the student has to grapple with that in order to find a solution that they then have to decide, is this reasonable? Is it correct? Can I show it's correct? And to me, the idea of rigor is really separate from the actual course and content, but it's more defined by how the instructor decides to proceed with activities with students so that they can learn a specific content.
Leon, did you want to add anything to that?
I think the only thing I would add is I too have often thought about rigor as difficulty, but I think we have to remind ourselves that certain tasks are more difficult for some students than others. So we can't necessarily, take a look at something and evaluate it based on the difficulty of a problem. Instead, I think we really are looking at something more like complexity. And, is this something that is more involved? Does it have steps? Is it something that is going to take some processing on the part of the student? Or is it just simply 2 + 2 = 4?
Okay, so thinking about the course itself, when I think of data science, I think of like spreadsheets, coding, right? A lot of tech involved. And so what about the equity issue? Like, is this a course that's going to be only for those who have, these resources and access to internet or all these things? Or how can it even be equitable?
That's a great question. I'd love to actually speak to that a little bit based on some experiences I've heard from a certain school district out in California. I spoke to a teacher out in Oxnard Union School District in California, and they went through quite a process to implement their data science course. And the one piece that was really phenomenal that he kept coming back to was the equity he saw this class bring to his students. He had such a variety of students in this course. He had students who had excelled in Math 1, who had were kind of blowing the covers off of every math class they took. He had other students who were struggling in their math classes. And what he saw is that all of those students, no matter their background with math, were coming to the table with data science and finding a new and engaging experience with math. The other piece that he really reflected on was the exposure to the programming and some of the coding that they got through their data science course. So yes, the technology piece in his case was a requirement, But he saw it as something that brought equity to the classroom because many of their schools did not offer computer science courses. And now suddenly this data science course gave them some exposure to computer science concepts to then sort of tease that along and say, is this something that you might want to continue further? They otherwise would not have had that exposure. So the thing he kept coming back to was the equity that it brought into these schools that offer data science, which is really exciting.
Can I ask either one of you where you see this falling in like a student's schedule? So, like is this replacing calculus or AP stats or whatever, or algebra 2? Like where is this falling, and what is the cost for the student then if they take this instead of something else?
That's a really interesting question that you asked, because where it falls, in my opinion, is as long as a student can do basic arithmetic, I think, and a student has curiosity, then they have the prerequisites that are necessary in order to engage in a rigorous data science experience. And I like to categorize data science as a gateway course. And so we have been trying to find that thing to connect mathematics to science and STEM to get more students in that STEM pathway. But data science incorporates aspects of algebra. It incorporates aspects of statistics and computing and programming. So a student can get a taste of all of these different forms of STEM and mathematics. And then the student can make a choice as to which pathway fits their interest. And so, like Ellen was saying, that equity piece, well, equity is for us to lower barriers for entry, right? And lowering barriers for entry doesn't mean that you're dumbing a course down. It means that you're making the standard for entry something that's achievable for almost every student. So if the standard of entry is basic arithmetic, and through problem solving and computing and using statistics when necessary and using algebra when necessary, then a student, maybe they can see their reflection in one of those courses, and then they can pursue their own goal. So I think it fits more so in the sense of high school as early as possible, so that you can see very different varieties of math and STEM, so that you can then take your focus and choose a pathway that's right for you.
I think the other piece that I would add to that is that, up until this point, we've really been talking about data science as a distinct course, but data science can also be used as an integrative approach. So data literacy is obviously has to be through an integrated approach because we're talking K-5, K-8, and so it's integrated in a very cross-curricular approach. In high school, that same approach can be taken. There are a number of content providers that we work with who have an algebra plus data science approach or an algebra plus statistics approach. And so they're actually using the data and the data science pieces to tell the story, to kind of hook the students into the concept. And then they are kind of excited about what they're learning, want to dig in, and then they kind of do the aha moment with the formula behind it. So let's explain what we just learned through this data using the math. And so the data is helping to sort of tell that overall story and builds that relevancy in an existing algebra or statistics course. So we have seen both approaches be taken, both a kind of distinct course and this integrated approach.
Okay. I'm wondering now from like a teacher or a parent point of view, college admissions. That's all I hear high school students talk about all these days, right? And calculus is often seen as that, diamond that is on your resume of like things you've taken. You've done the hardest class in high school. How do we help kids see that this is worth their time when, if we're not taking it as like freshmen, like you're saying early on in high school, like how do we convince them that this is worth their time, or convince colleges that this should be comparable?
I'm not going to be hyperbolic here and say that that's not important, because it's very important to some people, the types of institutions they're admitted to. People want to go to a good college. And so what we're trying to do as part of our work is to get people to sort of think about all the things that a student would learn or do in a data science class and look at those and try to compare them to the kinds of things that they would need to do if they're admitted into that university in the particular college or program that they want to study. So that to me, that's a very big lift, and that's going to require bringing a lot of people to the table. But as a parent, I had a child that did not enjoy anything STEM. And not that I'm saying you should make your child do STEM. I would want them to experience a data science course because now they have a reason for engaging in STEM. And one of the things that we noticed when we were doing the course at the School of Science and Math in Durham, North Carolina, is that once the student is invested in finding out a solution, they come to you and they want to know the mathematics behind it. So you're putting the problem first. Or if they see things happening computationally and they're like, well, why does it happen like that? Now you have a reason to introduce theory. And there would be students in our class who would be taking AP stats at the same time. And they would say, wait, what? That's what a confidence interval is? That's what a p-value is? And so it gives that balance. And the balance that it gives allows students to be more well-rounded in terms of the ability to see connections and how theory can be used to solve problems. And if I were a parent, I would really want my child to be able to have some sort of experience in that. And then on the flip side, as Lee Ellen mentioned, the integrated approach, when you're in that middle grade space, like you don't have any choice. You can't choose, you can't opt out of your data science. So not that we're saying we're going to have a data science course in middle school, but having students start early engaging with data and looking at data science as a method for investigation early on. Maybe now they get a chance to find themselves in STEM. They go into high school early on, they take a data science course, and then they still have space within the final years of their high school experience to choose calculus if they like, or AP stats if they like, or AP chemistry or AP biology. But they come in with a baseline skill set that's foundational to all of those STEM areas, as well as many of the skills that you're going to need in the job market in the 21st and 22nd century.
I think that the piece I would add to that too is, as Mahmoud is talking about the STEM piece, we know that there are students who have a very defined pathway. They know exactly where they want to be. They know what courses they need to take. Great. We are not discouraging that path and that approach. I think there are other students who may be a little bit more undecided, or they just haven't gotten to that point yet where they know where they're going to end up. I think this gives them that great exposure. The other piece to kind of mention is that we're not encouraging data science simply to create a whole batch of data scientists. We really want this more for those data-centric skills that students need no matter what career they go into, no matter what industry they go into. We are all bombarded with data in such a way that we never have been before. And so these are essential skills. So I think clearly that path has to be, that there's a lot of decision making about what path they need to take, knowing what their trajectory is. But I think Mahmoud made a really good point that the more we integrate this in those earlier years, the more time we give these students to really be able to explore what that path could be and to kind of open up those possibilities for them.
One thing I think a lot about is I don't know much data science. My husband is really good at that kind of stuff, but I have taught for almost 20 years, seventh grade pre-algebra through calculus and, very algebra, geometry heavy. How do we handle, there's a teacher shortage, right? Like, how do we get teachers interested in this? Like, get them all trained on this? The state standards don't require this. So how do we get everyone invested? And this is a huge systemic change that you want. So how do we even begin that?
That's a great question. Kind of a loaded question, right? There's a lot of things to answer there.
This is the hot seat.
Yeah, that's right.
Take your time with one at a time.
I do think that's where our work has to take so many different avenues. So Mahmoud and I are just two folks on the team, but we're kind of approaching this from lots of different prongs. We have this approach where we're working directly with districts and states who are interested in doing this work or want to learn more about it. But then we also have folks who are working on the policy side. They're working directly with states to advise them as standards revision is coming up, talking to them about why these skills need to be integrated. There's actually a project that we're working on right now to build learning progressions for data science. So these would not be standards for data science, but rather progressions that we can make available that we hope might be the gold standard one day. So that then that can advise states that as they're revising or creating new state standards, they can look to these progressions and look at the learning outcomes that we may have identified around data literacy and data science, and then pull those into their standards and make sure that they're addressing the right concepts. So there's a lot of different avenues. Like you said, it's a much bigger problem than just encouraging a district to teach a data science course or to integrate it. So lots of folks involved in trying to crack this nut.
And as we know, any change is always hard and slow moving.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And to add to what you were saying, Leah, I almost look at this sort of like a love story. So if you look at the research about why people go into math education, it's because they fall in love. It resonates with them. Maybe they're really good at it, or maybe they struggled early on or later on, and then they overcame and they want to help others go through that same struggle and come out on the other end better off for it. If we can somehow have universities make alterations in how they prepare teachers, and if we send out data-enabled teachers into the classroom, we can capture another group of students' love in STEM through data science. And now we're going to have the students who are already in love with the content as it's been taught, or in a more traditional way that is being taught now. But then there's this other group of students that's untapped that can fall in love with it from a different aspect. And they go into university and they come out to teach. And when they teach, students fall in love with math in a different way. And so we're growing our supply, but we have to do that in a way that people can be exposed to various methods and various concepts and various ways and tools and technology, so that they can see mathematics as really what it is. It's a tool that can be used to solve problems. And if we're able to do that, then I think we have a very good chance of integrating these sort of data-enabled concepts throughout of the content areas at all of the levels, especially starting from the upper elementary all the way through high school. Can you imagine a world where your social studies teacher understands how to build graphs and charts and use basic tools that they can use to work with data? And now when you're talking about one of my favorite topics, the Civil War or World War One, you're talking about it using data that we know about those encounters that really changed the way that the world worked.
I resonate with that. I worked with admin who misinterpreted data that I thought was pretty straightforward. So yeah, people who are afraid of math. I'm just curious as a teacher. So again, I don't know coding. I don't know data science. I want this for my students, right? It sounds like a good idea. You're selling it to me. But am I going to have to like go back to grad school and like learn all this stuff? Like, is this something I can learn in a week over the summer, or is it going to take years of practice to get good at? Like, is it like a calculus course level? Like, what is your thought of like how much prep and training a teacher might need who's already in the classroom and doesn't know anything about data science?
We have some content providers who make the material very accessible and approachable. So to answer your question, yes, you can decide if you and your district say, yes, this is something we want, district approves it, wonderful. We get you set up with a summer workshop and you can get started right away. Not to make it sound so simplistic, certain content providers, curriculum may take a different approach than others, but many of them do have summer workshops And then what they do is they work with the teachers throughout the year to provide additional support, do some refresh training. Once you're in the classroom, obviously things sometimes can look a little different through that lens. So they're going to support you through that with communities and practice, other additional training, things like that. So it is something that you can get ramped up on very quickly. In fact, one of our content providers will actually talk about their course as we want the teacher to have this sort of growth mindset alongside their students. And it's not something where you now suddenly stand at the front of the class and, do sort of a sit and get. No, you're learning, and your students may ask you a question and you may not know the answer, and you say, let's dive in this together. And so it's very much, you have to be willing to kind of learn alongside your students, but as a result, it's very valuable.
Leon, what you said was really important. This idea of the growth mindset. Um, I wouldn't expect someone to take a course and in 1 week or one semester be able to go into a classroom and teach data science like they've taught whatever course that they've been teaching in math for the past 15 years. What I would ask people to do is think strategically about places where data live in their lives and in the lives of their students, and work with their students to find out, are there math tools that we learn that can help us deal with this data that we have, to help us make some sense about this problem that we have. And I would have a call to action for math teachers to think of themselves as mathematicians and live their life looking for math as it exists out in society, and looking for data as it exists out in society. And when they find something that's really interesting, bring it into the classroom, thoughtfully introduce it if it aligns with some content that you're working with, and let students work through it and show that vulnerability in problem solving that we as adults in our professions all experience. Every problem that you get, you don't work through the solution right through one time. You have to work with other people, you have to iterate and grow over time. And as you grow and as you add to your skill set and to your instructional activity, then maybe venture on into teaching an independent data science course. I think each person in their content area should start data that resonates with the course that they're teaching.
Yeah, I just have one last question. I'm just curious, for any teachers or admin who are listening, what is your advice on first steps? We're ready to do something. What can we do, and where do we start?
I think Mahmood kind of, hit the nail on the head when he was talking about maybe start with the integrated approach. So there's a number of different resources out there where you can pull data into your classroom. You can do these exercises where you get students thinking about the why around data. Why does this graph look this way? What's going on here? What do we wonder about? And that may be a great first step. The other answer would be, come talk to us. We would love to, fill you in on what this can look like. What are the different approaches? What are the different content providers we work with? Because there's a lot of different ways you can tackle this. And so we'd love to really be your guide through this process if you're looking to approach an implementation of any sort.
What I would advise people to do is start thinking about how the world works now and the tools that people use in their work, and how are we teaching mathematics? And is there some alignment between the two? The world works now on data. The same computational tools, to a certain extent, that are used in the professional world are accessible to us on our laptop. If we can't program, there are drag and drop tools that are available to help us make visualizations and work with data, just like people in industry work with those same tools. And once you sort of think about how you're preparing students and how that's going to align with the world that they're going to go into, I think they'll come to the conclusion that they need to start working with some data. And I think that's the first step. The first step is to realize that there is value in working with data in mathematics, even if it's not a full data science course, even if there are only a few lessons throughout the school year that you do. I advocate for someone who's getting started to look at the content partners that we have in our network and pick one lesson and do it. And in the next semester, pick one more lesson and do it. And maybe choose from a variety of parts, work through it, see if you like it, and then come back for more. But I don't want anyone to go into it thinking that they have to do a graduate degree or a master's degree. I mean, if you want to go to that level, that's available, but that's not where we start. And starting in that fashion, the one other suggestion that I would give to people is find a buddy. Find a buddy in the math department, and then find a buddy from another department and say, we're going to do one great lesson that crosses our content area. And then you're accountable in a fun way with each other, and you can learn with each other, and you can see how that impacts students from the mathematics side and from the other content side. And from that, it's sort of you're growing this enthusiasm in your department, in another department, in your school, and that grows and grows. And from what we saw at the School of Science and Math, teaching a data science course to 11th graders with no experience in programming and no background in stat, after 3 years, we would have students come back to our class and say, wait, I'm doing a graph about the rise and fall of the Mississippi River. How did we make that graph again? I forgot. I'm doing a project on puppy food for my chemistry class, but I forgot the code that we use for bootstrapping. Can you remind me of that? And that energy permeates the school. And once that energy permeates the school, you don't have to convince, you don't have to seek out other help. The help will come from within, and you'll see the students start walking around with this different sense of academic self-esteem because they have a valuable skill that's valuable not only in academia, but also in the marketplace.
Wonderful. And on that hopeful note, I think we'll conclude our questioning round. We will now end by giving our guests a few minutes to share their final thoughts with you. And the floor is yours.
So one thing that I want listeners to come away with is this understanding that data science is as rigorous as any other math course. And the rigor that one experiences in data science may not resemble the rigor that are in courses that have more exposure to people, like algebra or geometry. But that doesn't mean that there is no rigor within a data science course. And the hope is that students can re-engage mathematically and using data science as a gateway course into all areas of STEM. And for decades, we've been talking about ways to do cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary work. And now we have data that can be the connector between the mathematics and the computing and the content area courses that we can use to engage students in relevant sort of instructional activities that are using theory from math computing as well as concepts from content areas. And I think that can be a powerful way to re-engage our students, not only in problem solving, but also in communicating and debating and defending their conclusions based on their discoveries. And in the climate that we live, I think it's imperative that students learn in a safe environment how to have discourse with one another, how to present facts and information to one another, and how to utilize that as a way to sort of shape their opinion and their views on the things that are going on in society that are very important to them.
So we are clearly very passionate about data science and really want to just encourage anyone who's interested in getting into data science or just simply wants to learn more about it and how to jump in. Please, we would love for you to reach out and connect with us. Both Mahmoud and I are on LinkedIn. That's a great way to get in touch with us. We also have a lot of different ways to get in touch via our website. So data science, the number 4, everyone.org, datascience4everyone.org is our website. You can go to the website to find out the different, to see the resource center where we have a lot of our content partners are highlighted on that resource center. You can join our Slack channel to have real-time conversations with our team and others in the data science community. You can also join our newsletter. We are very excited. The learning progressions that I mentioned earlier, we will be opening those up for public comment soon. We'll be looking for input on those learning progressions. We would love as much feedback on those progressions as we can get, because we want those progressions to be reflective of the types of students and educators that are approaching this work. So we really are trying to build a community along with this movement that we're in the middle of, and we'd love to connect with you and be your resources. So please, we'd love for you to reach out and let's get in touch and join the movement with us.
Thank you both. And that concludes this hot seat debate. I think you've given educators out there lots to think about. And now it's up to our listeners to take a moment, ponder this hot seat discussion, and share with your friends what resonated with you. We'd love for you to go to our Twitter at DebateMathPod to share your thoughts on this debate. What are your thoughts on data science? And huge thanks to both of our guests. Thank you for your thoughtful, very impassioned discourse and debate here. I learned tons, and I feel I just know like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to data science, but you've already shown me and taught me so much more today. And thanks to those who are listening. We hope you enjoyed and learned from this as well. And so as we wrap up, Lee Ellen, where can listeners find you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn, and then I'm also on Twitter or X at Lee Ellen Farmer.
We'll put that in our show notes. And Mahmoud, where can listeners find you?
Our listeners can find me on LinkedIn and also at our datascienceforeveryone.org website in the About section. And if you join our Slack channel, our Slack workspace, you can join the channel where we have discussions about issues in K-12 and teaching data science, best practices, how teachers have learned from other teachers, and maybe we can find a way to collaborate on a project.
Awesome. Thank you both. Want to learn more about incorporating debate activities into your math classroom? Go to luzniak.com/podcast to sign up for my mailing list and get your first set of example debate activities you could use with your students today. Go to luzniak.com/podcast.
Don't forget to reach out to us with comments and questions on debatemath.com, or follow us on Twitter at DebateMathPod and follow along with #DebateMathPod.
Rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts
or wherever you listen to this podcast. Your feedback is super important to us.
Well, that's all from us.
Looking forward to debating with you more next episode. Until next time, cheers.